I don't call it handstand walking. For most athletes, it's controlling falling. It's a controlled fall. Then it is a precision handstand walking. And I think there's an important distinction there. Most athletes, especially in the CrossFit setting, unless they come from a gymnastics background, you have a Danielle Brandon, or you have a Katrin, or, an Alex Smith, who have, substantial gymnastics backgrounds, who understand what it means to take a step with purpose and intention. Most CrossFit athletes are so strong that they're able to prevent the fall. So they're not really working with purpose and intention with a step. They're just so strong that they can make up for any inefficiencies that they have within their movement pattern. So can we take those handstand walks and upgrade them? Absolutely. Obviously, we've seen some obstacles. What Boz threw out this year with some pirouetting, I think, was a good step in the right direction. And also, don't want to call it a press to handstand. And, we had Boz on the podcast, our podcast, not that long ago, and he appropriately did not call it a press to handstand, which I think was correct, just going from support to handstand on the low parallettes. But those types of things, in terms of adding variations to what an athlete can do, walking backwards on purpose, walking sideways, taking steps with intention is very different than preventing a fall. And I think that's the main thing that we'll start to see, adding some intention into the steps.
And kind of circling back on that, in the inclusion, we had some new elements from gymnastics perspective at the games this year, whether it's the pirouettes, the support to handstand.
There you go.
Did I get that right?
There you go.
Wall facing strict handstand push-ups. Give us your honest assessment of those, of inclusion, the athlete's performance, some things you saw, some things you liked, you didn't. I know you had Boz on the podcast already, but I'm just curious from your perspective what it was like.
Well, I mean, I'm always excited when I see new gymnastics movements. It's something that I love to see people pushed and exposed to things more and more, because, as we talked about from earlier, that's the only way you can start developing higher skill understanding. And for us, it's always about a form of comparison. The reason why I think gymnastics is hard for growth to happen is because people have a really hard time understanding comparison, meaning what I watch at the Olympic Games versus what I can do. I have no form of comparison between those two things. To me, if the person does a backflip, a double backflip, or a triple backflip, all of them are amazing and I love to watch them, but I have no understanding of the increase in difficulty between those three things. And it's stratospheric, going from one backflip to 2 to 3. I mean, it's exponential in terms of the challenge that goes between those skills. But for the everyday viewer, they're all the same. They're all just too difficult for me. So by exposing an athlete to new movements, what we can start to see is, okay, an athlete will start to understand, okay, if I get up on the rings and try this, I know how much harder this other movement is that maybe, a Vellner's doing. But the movements that were exposed, I think, were great. And I specifically had a long conversation with Boz about the handstand push-up variation, wall facing with some deficit, not putting head on the ground. The challenges that come along with that. I love that setup because it forces athletes to create tricep activation. It forces athletes into what we call the tripod position, forcing the head out in front of the hands more, which is more in line with the way that we teach, which is always towards the highest level variation of the movement. I'm never training someone towards a particular standard. I think that's a dead end way to be training movements. So for all of the athletes that had ever been training head in line handstand push-ups, this exposed that weakness. That's an anterior delt dominant movement. As soon as you put a barrier, a ballistic block, or whatever it might be in the way, it forces the athlete's head to travel in front, which creates more tricep activation, which is the way it should be done. So for the athletes that had been training that movement pattern, they were in a better spot. They were a little bit more prepared to be able to push through and complete that movement. For the athletes that had only done it the other way toward that previous standard, they were exposed. So I love these idea of creating new variations, not for the purposes of just throwing them out there to another stupid human trick, but really for the purpose of understanding how to train towards the next variation. Because that one that Boz threw out there is the most applicable to a freestanding handstand push-up, which is inevitable. Mm-hmm. It's inevitable. Not kipping either, which I know we've seen before, a strict freestanding handstand push-up, which will be inevitable. And the one that he put out there was the most like what that athlete is going to experience if they want to do it with precision. Additionally, I love the addition of the parallel bars. To me, this was something I've been preaching. We used to make parallel bars for years with Power Monkey as well, a set of fitness parallel bars. We have them as a station at camp. We've done the man test at camp for 8 years now as one of our little fun things. And I loved I love the test. I think it was a really good, again, place to expose people in terms of comfort level and being in support. But it's something that I think most athletes use. It's a missing step in most people's athletic journey. In gymnastics, parallel bars is an event for us. It's where we build stability. It's where we build control before we take those movements to someplace unstable like the rings, someplace dynamic like the rings. And because rings have been so much more pushed in terms of where we see the support position, most athletes never prepare themselves on a static apparatus before jumping to the difficulty level that comes along with dynamic apparatus. So the exposure alone to saying you need to get in support more often, whether or not, a gym has a set of parallel bars, you can do these between boxes or dip bars or matadors, whatever you have in your gym, you have the ability now to understand the importance of a static apparatus before you jump onto the rings. And most people that I work with actually take them off the rings. Just spend more time on something static. Don't worry about trying to do what they did at the games. Just get more comfortable in support and then understand its application to something higher level.
In your mind, where is the line between, you mentioned this phrase, stupid human trick and legitimate test or, furthering of the challenge that we're putting these athletes through?
It's a fine line. You're going to have to test some things out. Are we going to see backflips in competition at some point? Possibly. I got a chance at last camp to teach Dallin, Pepper, and Jeff Adler some backflips for the first time. And both those guys, they picked it up in 15 minutes, from never having turned over to actually flipping and landing on their feet. Is it a stupid party trick? Yes, absolutely. Is it something that can be done with precision? And, you work on a way to standardize and say you need to stick. You get 10 reps. How many of these can you actually land without moving your feet? Give me a percentage hit. Can it be done in a setting that allows for competition to become a component there? Yes, but there are a lot of movements that probably need to stay as stupid human tricks, but I think we can probably expand into some really fun things that still create a competitive environment.
Thanks so much for watching our video. Be sure to comment below, like this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more videos just like this one. Follow us on Instagram at Talking Elite Fitness. Be sure to subscribe to get all of our audio episodes when they drop on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.